Vulkan lives! Hello and welcome to yet another Scuffed Hammer video. My name is Hammer, and today we are painting the pinnacle of Salamander Space Marines, Vulkan. And you might be asking, Hammer, why is Vulkan the pinnacle of salamanders? Wouldn't Vulkan be the pinnacle of salamanders? And to that I would say, you'd be right, except GW doesn't love us. Poor salamander players. We don't have a Vulkan Primarch model for 40k yet, so until then, Vulkan will have to do. But that doesn't mean that Forge Father Vulkan deserves any disrespect on his name. Only with him lies the hope of Vulkan returning and finding the last 4 artifacts of Vulkan, known only as the Engine of Woes, the Obsidian Chariot, the Unbound Flame, and the Song of Entropy. And before I glaze this man a little bit too much, let's move on to building and painting Vulkan. This is my first ever GW resin model. In fact, it's my first ever model that isn't the plastic that GW makes. And I have heard a lot of horror stories about how bad GW resin is, and spoiler alert for a little bit later on in the video, I 100% agree with them. On the plus side though, this model was extremely easy to pull apart. Like, I didn't have to use the clippers at all, I just needed to come in with a hobby knife and clean it up a little bit. It fell apart almost perfectly. And the only reason I used clippers in the first place is because I was a bit scared that tearing it apart would ruin it. After you tear/cut the model from the sprue, make sure that you wash it because GW uses mold release agent, which can interfere with your paint scheme. If you don't wash it, I've heard stories that the paint can flake off from anywhere from 1 day to a couple of years just because the paint refuses to stick to the mold release agent. And there's really no excuse to not washing it. It's pretty simple, just get some warm water with some soap in it and gently scrub it with a soft, bristled toothbrush. Now, one of the other positives of this model is that it was relatively simple to put together. There was only 3 or 4 connections I needed to make with the super glue, and I found it pretty easy because I generally use super glue even with plastic models, so I didn't have to get used to a whole new medium of sticking models together. And as always when it comes to base coating, use whatever is comfortable or convenient for you. I use my airbrush because rattle cans and I just don't mix. And again, as always, if you find it easier to use a brush or you don't have an airbrush, then using the pot of paint is fine. It is very rare that when using an airbrush that it can't also be done with a brush. In my experience, airbrush just equals convenience. Take the cloak here for example. I find it much easier to use an airbrush for white because it is one of the hardest colours, in my opinion, to paint. And we're using the pink and white combo from my previous Infernus models video, go check that out if you haven't watched it, because I love the idea of having my Salamander's dragon skins be a reference to the original Badab War Salamander scheme. Now, you may have noticed that instead of painting all of the flame details gold like in the original model and even the artwork, I'm only picking out a few small details to paint gold. And that's because of a couple reasons. The first being, I hate painting gold. Even with this new brown and gold technique that I've learned, it's still a painful colour to paint. The second being, I very quickly learned that painting this model sucked. GW resin sucks and the brush just didn't work the way I wanted it to, so I decided to paint as little as possible with a brush. And the third is that there has been big rumours that there is going to be a upscaled Primaris Vulkan coming for 10th edition. And if this ends up being true, I'm going to pull out all the stops and go all out for the Primaris Vulkan. And I don't want to invest a bunch of time painting an old model I'm never going to use anymore if I'm just going to buy the new one when it comes out. So some of you might be asking, why did you even bother getting the old model in the first place then, Hammer? And to that I'd reply, I just loved it. It looks a little goofy because it's small, but I still love it. And I'd like to look back in 10, 15, 20 years, look at the collection and go, I'm so glad that I got this old model before they discontinued it. And I think this is a great time to boost engagement. If you have an old model that you absolutely love and you got it before they discontinued it, comment it down. Tell me what model you loved. And if you missed out on one, or you only joined in the last year or two and there's an old model you wish you could get, also comment down below, tell us what model you wish you could have gotten. While I am leaving out a lot of small detail colors like painting the fuel tank orange, I'm still going to do the basics like painting the backpack that bluish black color that I do for the rest of my Space Marines. And here is an easy visual indicator on how shit GW resin is. The backpack emblem broke off, not once, but 2 or 3 times, to the point that I just left it off and glued it on when I finished the video. This sucked and it was infuriating and it made painting the backpack emblem so hard. You can see here that just like with the magma weapons that I like to paint, when I paint flames, I like to go back and forth, going white, yellow, orange, red, then tipping it off with black, and wet blending between each layer. But because I was painting just the emblem without it attached to a model and only way to hold it was with my fingers, it sucked. I had to go over it 5 or 6 times because I kept touching it in the wrong way and pulling paint away. It just was horrible. But the magma blade was awesome. I really loved the 2 power nodes. It's a really fun and interesting way compared to the 1 power node on most power weapons. And again, I cheat the outer edge with a bit of Modern Earth crackle paint. It just works well. But I decided not to use it on the flames, so there was a little bit of difference between them and the power spear. Now here, I wasn't too sure how to replicate that inner layer of skin the same way it looks on the lychee skin from the Infernus Marines. So I tried out using some flesh tone with a bit of wash, and I don't like it. It looks really icky. It would be perfect for Night Lords, but I'm not a Night Lords player, and one would say that Salamanders is the opposite of a Night Lords player. So for when the next Vulkan Histan model comes out, I'll have to come up with something that looks a little bit better. When doing the squiggles for the squiggly little lines, I tend to work off feeling rather than what looks good. I kind of just let the brush tell me where it wants to go. And so far, that technique hasn't failed me. Now, before the final touches on the model, I find it's best to go and touch up the little bits of overspill you've had onto the main color of your armor, in this case it's green, and just make sure that you get anything that you've just done a bit wrong. So for me, my airbrush went a little bit over where I would have liked it to go. And then it's onto the final stage, which for me is washes. A little bit of Mantis Warrior green on the green armor just to make it pop a little bit, and then some Adrax Earthshade to just dirty up the metallics a little bit as well. And then, once I've glued the backpack emblem back onto the model, it's time to just do a little bit of basing, which for me, you should know by now. It's these 2 acrylic paints I stole out of my mother's paint hoard before I left home, and then some Modern Earth crackle paint just to really make that lava look. I put the model through the little slit on the base, and then when the crackle paint dried, I kind of glued the model down with the crackle paint instead of using super glue. And with that all done, it's about time for a final reveal. And that about wraps up our video for today. While I do love the fact that I have a Vulkan Histan model, and I think it looks really good, I can't wait till it's updated to be in plastic, because I hated this. I never want to paint GW resin again, but I know at some point I will. Before we end the video, it's time for a little bit of a self-plug. Here at Scuffed Hammer, we have a Discord server where we want to build and foster an awesome supportive community. And when we asked our community that's there already what we could do to help build that, we had an awesome suggestion from Blindburger, that at the end of every video, we answer a dumb, silly question or a serious one from you guys in the Discord. So, we're going to do that for the first time in this video. And since Blindburger suggested the idea, I thought I'd give him the honour of the first question. And Blindburger asks, which Warhammer model do you relate to the most? And my answer to that would probably have to be the Emperor's Champion from the Black Templar, because this guy's just taking a moment in the middle of a battle just to stand there with his sword raised, just posing, which is something I feel like I could see myself doing. And that brings our video to a close. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps a bunch. I'll see you on the next video, but until next time, it's over to you, Scuffed.